Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Summarizing Data with Excel. My name is Stephanie DiPaolo, coming to you from the Pittsburgh office of Excel for Apps, who's sponsoring today's webinar. Thank you all for taking the time to join us for another one of MrExcel's fantastic sessions. As you know, our featured presenter today is Bill Jelen. Bill is the host of MrExcel.com and the author of over 40 books about Microsoft Excel. Before founding MrExcel.com in 1998, Bill spent 12 years in the trenches as a financial analyst for the accounting, finance, marketing, and operations departments of a publicly held company. Excel for Apps has been pleased to sponsor Bill in a number of different webinars that are packed full of Excel tips, tricks, and best practices for finance and accounting users. Today's topic, summarizing data, is a popular one. If you have any questions, you may enter them in the chat panel at any time, but Bill will be answering them at the end of today's webinar. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'd like to briefly introduce you to Excel for Apps. For the past 12 years, we've been passionate about accelerating ERP financial processes with the ease of Excel. Our add-ins help companies shave days off their period-end close, simplify current cumbersome processes, and achieve lean and other strategic initiatives, all with their tool of choice, Excel. We've helped over 1,000 organizations globally running Oracle eBusiness Suite, SAP, and PeopleSoft with faster, smarter, and easier Excel solutions. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 CPE credit. If you're interested in receiving a certificate, you can sign up by visiting the following URL provided. This link will also be in the follow-up email that you'll receive tomorrow. With that, I'm happy to turn it over to Bill to share today's webinar. Bill.
All right, we are going to have some fun today. We're going to go through a lot of different Excel tips and tricks, all about summarizing data. And this all popped up when I was doing one of my live Excel seminars. I was down in Dallas, Texas, at a company doing a seminar, and I was showing, one of the things I usually show is subtotals, and one of the guys in the room who was really sharp, raised his hand and said, "Well, wait, why didn't you do it this way?" Right? And, so I, took a break from my usual routine and did it his way. All right. And then as I started thinking about it on the plane ride home, there's a lot of different ways to summarize data in Excel, 5, 6, 7 at least. And so today we're going to take a look at the various methods. And I'm going to start off with subtotals because that was the topic that I started with when Adam in Dallas said, "Hey, there's a better way." We'll take a look at remove duplicates, the old advanced filter, and then one of my favorites, something that has been in Excel for 20 years and I don't think a lot of people use anymore because it's just, it was one of those original tools that it's called Consolidate, and it can do a lot of things. One of the brand new tools then, Power Query, how to solve this with formulas, and then finally, pivot tables. We'll leave some time for questions at the end, and also I'm going to ask you to vote for your favorites. So, as we go through, you get to vote for 3. All right, so we're going to get started off here, summarizing data with subtotals. The subtotals command back on the data tab back here came along in Excel 97, right? So now 21 years we've had this tool. And I have a data set here with columns: sales rep, date, product, customer, quantity, revenue, profit, and cost. And it looks like with our headings up there in row 1, I'm just going to choose all of column E here and look down in the lower right-hand corner. It tells me the numerical count, 563 rows of data, 564 cells that are not empty, so that 1 row of headings and then the rest of it is all numbers, 563 rows. But these concepts work whether we have 500 rows or 500,000 rows. So I need to produce a report here of totals by customer. And so in order to use subtotals, one of the first things you have to do is you have to sort the data, right? So choose one cell in the customer column if you want the totals by customer, and you'll sort like that. So the customers now are arranged alphabetically. It doesn't matter what order you sort them in, they just have to be together. And then we want to add, after every customer, we're going to add a new line with the totals for that customer. And of course, you could do this the old-fashioned way with home insert sheet rows. I just pressed Control and the ditto key. The ditto key is a quotation mark key, brings the value from above down into the current cell and then leaves it in edit mode so you can just type space total. And then what is this? The alt equals or the auto sum would put these in. All right, so it's not horrible, but if you have 100 customers, it's going to take you 30 minutes to do 100 customers at least. So Microsoft introduced a command that will make this very, very fast. Make sure your data is sorted by customer. Go to the data tab, and then out here we'll choose subtotal. Subtotal. All right, so we choose subtotal, and the subtotal dialog box. I wish I could make this larger. At each change in, they always want a subtotal by the leftmost column, and sometimes that's right, but in this case it's not right, because for me I want a subtotal by customer. So we open that drop down and we choose customer. Then they look at the rightmost column. If the rightmost column is numeric, they choose a sum here. If the rightmost column is text, like if there was a region name or something out there, they're going to choose to count. But there's actually 11 functions: sum, count, average, max, min, product, which would be a weird one. I don't know why we would ever multiply everything together. Count, numeric, standard deviation, and variance. But in this case, sum is correct. And then they always want to add the subtotal to the rightmost column. You know, kind of like that table functionality does. The control T tables always wants to add to the rightmost column. But it's better here. In subtotals, we can choose the 4 columns: quantity, revenue, profit, cost of goods sold. We have choices here. We could page break between groups. I'm not going to be printing this, so no. Summary below the data. You could actually have the summary up here above the data if you needed to for some reason. All right, and then when I click OK, they're going to do what I did that first time for the first customer. They're going to insert a new row, bring the customer name down, type the word total, add the total functions. But they don't do it for just one customer. They do it for all of the customers all the way down, right? Beautiful, beautiful trick. And even at the bottom, I don't know how I was going to do this. Well, actually, I do know how I would have done it. The grand total is a hard formula, because the grand total has to ignore all the other subtotals, or get only the other subtotals, or do that crazy old accounting trick where you would add everything from E2 to E580 and then divide that by 2, right? Take the total of everything and divide by 2, because every single number, like this 800 is in this cell and it's also in that cell, so dividing by 2. But the subtotals makes that old accounting trick obsolete, because it just adds the values that are not subtotal functions. Beautiful little formula there. All right, and on the left-hand side here, we have 3 buttons, 1, 2, and 3, the group and outline buttons. These were added by the subtotal command. I'm going to click the number 2 button and check this out. That hides all of the rows that were detail rows. So we see the headings in row 1, yep, but everything from row 2 to row 37 gets hidden. And then everything from row 39 to 74 gets hidden all the way down. And so what we end up with is this beautiful 1-page summary of the data. And this is my goal here. I want to see total quantity, revenue, profit, and cost for each customer. All right, so now I'm going to send just this data, right? And if you've ever used subtotals, you might have fallen down this trap where you select the data like this and then Control-C to copy, Control-C to copy. Go to a new workbook, like Control-N for new, and then paste Control-V. And it's so annoying that they don't give us just the things we can see. They bring us all of the cells, and there's no group and outline buttons that would allow us to hide everything else. The first time that I discovered this, I was sitting at my desk, and behind me was the world's most annoying manager, right? This guy was in a hurry. He needed just that data. And he watched me do that. Of course, it didn't work. I'm like, oh, this was so long ago. You know, back in the 90s, Excel had just added subtotals. And yeah, I said, that's horrible. They didn't give us a way to select just the things we can see. And he says, well, of course it didn't work. Of course it didn't work. And this guy was annoying. Did I say he was annoying? You might be working for him right now. I don't know. And he said, you didn't use the visible cells only command first. Visible cells only. I said, what are you talking about? Now, unbeknownst to him, I'm already moonlighting. I'm at night, I'm running MrExcel.com, right? And here, the most annoying manager in the history of the world is telling me something about Excel I've never heard of before, called visible cells only. And back in the day, it was Control-G for go to, and then click special, and then click visible cells only, and okay, all right? And you'll see that when I do that and then copy, I'm getting just the individual rows. Each individual row is being copied. I turn around to this guy. I said, where'd you learn that? He said, oh, I read it in Excel help. I'm like, what? Who reads Excel help? Anyway, copy, Control-N for new, Control-V to paste, and you get our customer totals like that. Now, a great follow-up to that story, I was back when I lived in Akron, Ohio. doing a seminar just for the local Chamber of Commerce at the Portage Lake Senior Center. The Portage Lake Senior Center was a lunchbox web seminar, and I came in and realized this was not my audience. These aren't accountants. These aren't people that use Excel all the time. But here I am. I'm going to make the best of it. And I went through that whole trick, and a lady, she must have been 82, right in the front row. She raises her hand. She says, "Why did you go through all those steps? You could have just pressed Alt semicolon, Alt semicolon." And sure enough, Alt semicolon is the shortcut for go to special visible cells only. Okay, right? I don't know how she ever discovered that. She's like, "Well, we use it all the time." I'm like, "You use it all the time where? At Bridge Club?" But Alt semicolon. There's also a quick access toolbar command that you can use right here called select visible cells, and sure enough, that's where it shows that the shortcut key is Alt semicolon. All right, so there's the subtotals command. One other amazing thing, for those of you who already knew subtotals and love subtotals, here's a trick that I learned from a guy named Derek Fraley in Springfield, Missouri. Derek has been in my seminar in Springfield a whole bunch of times. He's works at a bank. He's a hardcore Excel user. And Derek, he tries to teach me something new every time I'm in Springfield. And one year he said, "All right, well, hey, look, this isn't any good. This data is sorted alphabetically. That's not how anyone wants to see this. Think about it. In real life, we want to see the largest customers at the top." And I agreed with him. You do want to see the largest customers at the top, but you're not going to be able to sort it here. I thought you're going to have to go over to this version of the data, or whichever version of the data, the other worksheet, and sort it there. He's like, "Oh, no, I knew it. You didn't know this trick." And sure enough, when the data is collapsed like this, down to the number 2 view, you can choose any one cell in the revenue column and go to the data tab and click Z to A, and Wagmore Dog Store in San Antonio comes flying not to row 2, but to row 49. And what just happened there is they took all of the records for Wagmore Dog Store and the total row and brought that whole thing as one group up to the top. If I go back to the number 3 view, you see they didn't sort those records. They left them in their original sequence, but because that group of records was the largest customer, it brought the whole thing to the top. That was that amazed me that first off, anyone would try it expecting it would work. And it amazed me that Microsoft actually did the right thing and had that work. All right, so out of our 7 consolidate data methods, subtotals is my choice number 1. All right, now, Adam, remember Adam from Texas, from Dallas, who said, "Well, wait, why'd you go through all that subtotal thing? You could have just used remove duplicates." And I thought about that for a second. Remove duplicates is this awesome thing that came along in Excel 2010, the remove duplicates. So if I wanted to get one unique row per customer, I could just choose one cell in the data, go to remove duplicates, unselect all, and say I want to remove the duplicates based on customer, like this. All right, click OK. 547 duplicate values found and removed, 16 unique values remain. Now, that's great, but it didn't change anything. It didn't summarize anything, right? So that's not going to work. I'm going to undo. So press the undo button up here, or Control Z. What Adam was suggesting is that we build a second table outside of the data set. So I'm going to take those customer fields and move them out here to the right. And then from there, remove duplicates, which will get me a unique list of customers. And then we're still stuck doing some sort of sum if or something like that to summarize that data. So let's go over the sum if command. And actually, here we are in 2018. Yeah, it's time, I guess, to switch over to the sum ifs, the plural version, the sum ifs plural version. So what we're going to do is specify the numbers we want to sum up. That's all of the quantity fields over here. Quantity fields, E2 to E564, and I want to lock that down to rows 2 to row 564, but I want to leave the E free to move, so I press F4 once. That locks everything down. And then I press F4 again, and that gives me just the $signs before the 2 and just the $signs before the 564. That way, as I copy down from J2 to J3 to J4 to J5, I'm always looking back at the whole database. But as I copy to the right, it's going to continue to look at quantity. All right, and then the criteria range is go look through those customer names over there. And this time, I'm going to use F4 once, which will lock down the rows and columns, and see if it's equal to Open Sky Martial Arts. And this time, I'm going to press F4 3 times. 1, 2, 3 times to say that we're always going to look for the customers that's in column J. So the single $sign before the J, and we will copy that across, and then we need to copy that down. I've shown this trick. If you've been on any other webinar, I always show this trick, one of my favorite tricks of all time. And this is easy. I could just grab that fill handle and drag down. But here I'm going to double click the fill handle, and it looks to the left, figures out how many rows are in this data set, and we get our results. If we wanted this sorted by revenue, then it's still up to us to do data Z to A, and we have our results. All right, so there's method number 2, remove duplicates. You know, at this point, we're kind of playing dueling Excel, right? I did it with Subtotals. Adam comes along with remove duplicates. I'm like, well, hey, if you're going to use remove duplicates, then what the heck? Let me go really obscure here and bring back the advanced filter. The advanced filter on the data tab. So we have the filter drop downs, and then we have the advanced filter, the old advanced filter. And the advanced filter is another great way to get a unique list of customers. So if I have the original data set, I create an output range. The output range just has to have any headings that I want from the original data. And I choose one cell in the original data, go to advanced filter. So it detects where the edges of my data are. And actually, let's clear that out. Let's just put everything in there. So control asterisk. It's not going to work. Let's choose the whole data set. Advanced filter. All right. I'll use the reference button. Control shift down arrow, control shift right arrow, select the whole range. We want to copy to another location, and the location we're going to copy to is K1. And we want unique records only, Click OK, and that will give me the list of customers. All right, so that's the advanced filter. At this point, we're really back to exactly like Adam's trick, where we could take these formulas and duplicate them in the advanced filter. All right, so those methods are really sort of the same, just how do you get to the unique list of customers? All right, but let me get to the one that I think is really an amazing and underused trick, a trick that's been around for a long, long time. I remember using this, back in the early 90s when I just switched from Lotus 1-2-3 to Excel. And it's called the Consolidate command. It's back here on the data tab, and I have a nice big screen today, a wide 1080p monitor, and so you get to see the icon. It's really frustrating though when your screen gets smaller. Consolidate is one of the first ones that gets collapsed. And so it's this little icon of 5 white squares pointing to 1 red square. That's the Consolidate icon. When I'm on a smaller screen on a laptop and it doesn't have the word, it's always hard for me to find this. And before I solve our current problem with Consolidate, let's just talk about what Consolidate can do in general. All right, so I have 3 worksheets here, Q1, Q2, and Q4. And each worksheet has a similar structure in that there's customers going down the left-hand side, like that. And then across the top, there's months going across the top. And then in the intersection of each customer and month, there's a number. I don't know if that's quantity or number of days. Who knows what that is, right? But it's a number. And that's the Q1 field, or worksheet. And then I have a Q2 worksheet with not quite the same shape, but the same general structure. Customers down the left-hand side and months going across the top. Notice there's more months this time, and there's more customers. And some of the people that were there in Q1 are still there in Q2, but others have come and others were added or deleted. All right, so the actual customer list can change from quarter to quarter. And I don't know, this is called Q2, but it looks like they didn't bother to get around to doing it till the end of August. So that's 5 months. And then the Q4 report here has 4 months across the top, September, October, November, December, but still the same general shape. All right, so Consolidate works with 1 row of labels on the left and 1 column of labels on the left and 1 row of labels across the top. All right, and you say to yourself, well, that's really limiting. Well, when would that ever happen? Well, it actually happens a lot. If you have some sort of a report with, well, quantity, revenue, cost of goods sold, and profit going across the top, and a list of customers, and you have one of those for every month, I can envision where this would happen, or even a chart of, a GL report. You might have this. Okay, so to consolidate the data, I'm going to come here to a blank worksheet, The consolidate command is going to add a whole bunch of rows and a whole bunch of columns, so you always want to make sure that you're in the top left corner. It can be here, it can be here, it doesn't matter where it is, you just need to make sure that there's not stuff. If you have a bunch of stuff here, consolidate is going to override that. So you wouldn't want to start consolidate from there, you'd want to start consolidate from here. All right, so it doesn't matter where you are, just make sure that there's plenty of room to the below and left of the data. So we use the consolidate command here, and it's going to ask us to specify where our data is coming from. Now the browse button is useful if your 3 worksheets were stored in different workbooks. So maybe you had a workbook for January, a workbook for February, a workbook for March, and so on. You want to consolidate all those. Provided they're all the same general shape, 1 column of labels, 1 row of labels, this is going to work. All right, but here, because they're in this workbook, I'm going to use the reference edit button. And I go back to Q1 and I specify where the data is, like this. And then click the little arrow here to go back. And so that's my first reference. I'm going to click add to add that to my all references. And now we'll use reference edit again. And what's really annoying, I don't know if this is a feature or a bug, because my first data set was A1 to D7, they think that all of the time it's going to be 4 columns by 7 rows. And maybe in most situations that's true, but in my situation, it's never true. All right, so when I click browse here and I go to Q2 and I start to click, oh, it didn't happen, that's funny. They'll sometimes automatically select the same range. All right, and so we add that one. So we're adding Q1 and Q2, and that'll do one more here. And we'll go to Q4 and select that data. Oh, there, yeah, the marching ants were there in the wrong area. And then click add. All right, so we have all 3 of our references here in the all references. And then I want to use the labels in the top row. So in other words, take these labels across the top and in the left column, like that. And we'll click OK. All right, and check this out. Here's what they did. They took any customers on any of those 3 sheets and they put them down the left-hand side. Across the top, they took any month that was on any of the 3 sheets, and they happened to do them in order. So we end up with January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, and then September, October, November, December. If I would have specified those in the wrong sequence, we might have ended up with October, November, December, and then January, February, March, and then April, or something like that. Now, a couple of annoying things here. What was up in cell A1? It said name. That label from A1 never gets copied, so we have to type that in, right? That's not a big thing. And then these blank cells. So Victor Skelba II, he didn't have any records in January, February, March. So instead of putting zeros there, they're leaving them as blank, which I guess would be useful in some cases, but never in any case that I'm trying to do. So I'm always trying to fill those blank cells with zeros, and I use Control H, Control H. Control F is find, F as in Frank, or F as in find is fine, and then H. I have no idea why it's H. The word replace doesn't have an H anywhere in it. It's not even that H is next to the F. It's 2 letters away from the F. Who knows? So we're going to find what? We're going to find nothing and replace it with 0, and then replace all. And they replace 51 blank cells with zeros. All right. Now, of course, if the underlying data changes, we haven't created any kind of formulas here. It's just going, we're going to have to consolidate again. But it won't be that hard to consolidate again. Let's come back here to Q2 and we'll change, we'll add media in there and give me low numbers like 10. And we'll go to Q4 and add me in there with 15. All right, so we've changed the underlying data. We come back here to the result, just go up to that top left corner cell and do the consolidation again. And it remembers the references. Click OK. All right, and we still have the same annoyance that we're going to have to do Control H again. But even find and replace remembers the last thing I did, so I can replace all. And we see the updated results with me appearing with 10 from the second sheet. It looks like August was overlapping, and then 15. Actually, that's bizarre. What's going on there? All right, we'll figure that one out. All right. So, how do we use Consolidate to solve our current problem here? We want to take one line from each customer, total the quantity, revenue, profit, and cost. And while this data set has 8 columns and 4 columns of labels, we could actually just select this range right here, which has just 1 column of labels and then 1 row of headings across the top. So if I come out here to the right-hand side, go to a nice blank cell with plenty of blank area to the right, and go to Consolidate. All right, and we'll delete the old reference that's there. And what I want to add, I want to take this data from D1 to H564, top row, left column, and click OK. And it's stuck there in the freeze panes. We end up with 1 line per customer, quantity, revenue, profit, and cost, like that. All right, so data consolidate is a really, really fast way. Certainly, it's faster than Adam's method and even faster than the advanced filter method, and probably faster than the subtotal method. I mean, it's a really, really quick way to summarize this data. So at this point now, we've covered 4 different methods. And this one, the one that no one ever thinks about using, the consolidate, for my money, this is the fast one. This is a really, really fast way to go. All right, so I'll leave consolidate there. Now, the new way, and this is a feature that was introduced after Excel 2013 came out, called Power Query. And boy, this is a confusing feature to find depending on what version of Excel you have. You have to look back here on the Data tab. If you're in Excel 2016, there's an item called Get and Transform Data. That was the 3rd group. It was over here in Excel 2016. But if you have Office 365, they took that group and they moved it to the first group, Get and Transform Data. All right, so Power Query has this label, Get and Transform Data. And if you don't have that, if you're in Excel 2013 or Excel 2010, provided you're using Windows and not a Mac or not an iPad or not an Android, right? You have to be on the Windows version of Excel. You can go out to Microsoft and download the add-in called Power Query, and you get your own icon or ribbon tab with all of these choices. All right, and so Power Query will let us summarize data, and again, it remembers the steps that we use. So if the data changes later, we can simply refresh. All right, now Power Query loves to work on tables, so that's Control T or Format as Table. When you create a table, they call it Table 4, and you might want to call it My Data or something, Sales Data. Just give it some nice table name so you can find it later. All right, and then we want to summarize this data using Power Query. So on the Data tab, we're going to say that we're going to get data actually from a table or range. So I'm in that table or range. It's going to take a few seconds to load Power Query here. All right, Power Query. I'd be interested to know how many of you have never seen Power Query ever. It's a feature that came out between versions of Excel, so there was no fanfare for it. By the time Excel 2016 came out, it had been out for a year, so they assumed that anyone who had downloaded the add-in was already familiar with it, so they didn't bother to publicize it. And somehow, that is a way to make sure that no one finds out about a feature, to introduce it between features. And so with Power Query here, what we're interested in is we're getting just customer, quantity, revenue, profit, and cost. And so these other columns, these columns that I don't need, I can choose those columns. I was click on product heading, control click on the sales rep heading, and right click and say remove those columns. And then I want to group this data. So under transform, there's something here called group by. And I'm going to group by customer, and there's going to be a new column name called total revenue. And the operation I'm going to do is sum the revenue column. We'll go to advanced here to see if we can add more. I'll add another aggregation. This will be called total profit. And we're going to use sum to sum the profit column. All right, so I can change the order of how those results are going to appear. And maybe all I care about is revenue and profit. I don't need to see total cost or total quantity, right? I could add them if I needed to, but I won't. I'll click OK. All right, and what we get now here is our result is 1 line per customer arranged with total revenue and total profit. And if I want to see it sorted high to low by revenue, Derek from Springfield's trick, I can right click and say that I want to sort by. Oh wait, where's sort by? Under transform, home. Here we are. We'll use this sort command. The other one, sort descending. All right, and so then what we find out is that they've summarized the data, total revenue, total profit, and then we'll click close and load, and it actually runs the query. And there are results. And we're here on the right-hand side, we have this queries and connections panel. The queries and connections panel tells us they loaded 16 rows, 16 summary rows. Now, the beautiful thing about Power Query is once this definition has been created, if the underlying data changes, so if I come back here and we just, let's add 20 more rows or something like that. And these will all be sales to Excel for apps. And we'll make the revenue really high, like that. All right, so now we've added new data. When we come back to the result, we can click inside, and over here in this panel, we have a refresh icon. I realize the GoToMeeting is sitting there on top of that. There's a refresh icon. We click refresh, and they'll go back out to the underlying data. The one new row here, and we find Excel for apps at the top with that total. All right, this is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful feature. All right, Power Query, in this case, we were just taking one data set, but you can take multiple data sets. You can take every single workbook in one folder and have them combine them all. You can do all kinds of transformations using Power Query. Great, great feature. And let's say that you knew that every day the IT department was putting a new invoice register out there, and you got to summarize that invoice register. You can right-click here and go to Properties and say, look, every time I open this workbook, just go out and refresh the data, right? So I don't want to have to click refresh every day. Every day when I open the workbook, just go out and refresh the data for me, and it'll work. Or even refresh every 1 minute or 5 minutes, or if somehow you got a workbook with streaming data from a point of sale system or whatever, right? It's just absolutely amazing set of tools there. All right, well, next up is going to be pivot tables. But before I get to pivot tables, I have to tell you, in addition to these webinars, I also have videos out on YouTube. And so, this became a conversation I had on YouTube. I had Summarized Data Week. I went through various methods, and I love the people on YouTube because they'll weigh in with their opinions. And there's a fellow I know from Australia who wrote in and said, well, you didn't have to do any of that. You could have just done this with formulas. And I said, I suppose I could have done it with formulas. And I was kind of thinking about some of the array formulas you'd have to do. And then he sent me a workbook showing me the formulas that he has. And this fellow, Dan is on the team that helps design questions for a competition called Model Off. Model Off, to me, is financial modeling. It's basically the World Excel Championships. And Dan finished in the top 3 one year, and so then he became part of the question design team. So Dan is a really smart spreadsheet guy. And Dan sent me this set of formulas here, and he even said, hey, look, you can choose whether you're going to summarize by sales rep or by customer, and the data will update. And you can even say that you only want to do it for the first half of the year or the first quarter of the year. So we changed these dates, or maybe we just want it for 2018. So if I change 2018, watch all the data down here will update. All right, and I'm like, okay, that looks cool. I get it. But then I went to see how he was doing it, and he has my original data here, just like I have. But then he has this worksheet with an insane number of formulas. Let's just choose all of the formula cells, find and select formulas, and there are 12,072 formulas on this worksheet, which just impresses the heck out of me that Dan took the time to create 12,072 formulas and sent this in as his contribution to summarizing data week. And tell you what we'll do, I'll make this available in the download. I know Excel for Apps will send out the recording, and then we'll send out this workbook. So you're more than welcome to come in here and marvel at Dan's formulas. But they're crazy formulas. I mean, this is a 1-hour webinar. I have no hope of explaining these formulas. All right, so I'm offering that as method number 6 out of the 7 methods. But let's get back to pivot tables. Pivot tables. All right, pivot tables. My favorite feature in all of Excel. Allows you to create summary reports very, very quickly using just a few clicks of the mouse. No formulas, which is great. All right, so here's our underlying data. And again, we want to see total revenue, quantity, revenue, profit, and cost by customer. All right, so we just choose one cell in our data. And a pivot table is going to make this so fast. I'm going to put the results of the pivot table out here on the right-hand side. Choose one cell in the data, go to the Insert tab, go to Pivot Table. And then we're going to say that it's going to go to an existing worksheet. I'll just put it there in K3. They detected the edges of the data and click OK. And now what we have is a list of all of our fields. This is the pivot table fields list. It gets docked over there on the right-hand side. List of all the fields in the original data, and then 4 drop zones like this. So we have filters, columns, rows, and values. And I think for someone who's new to pivot tables, this is so confusing because these headings are really hard to understand. And if you've been around for a long time, they screwed up these icons. These icons are reversed. This columns icon is not in the right spot. This columns icon belongs down here, and the rows icon belongs up here. And I've trying to convince the Excel team that they have it wrong, and I'm showing them the history going back to Excel 2003 of how those icons have appeared over the years. And I don't know if A, they just think I'm insane, or B, they don't think it's important enough. But so far I haven't got them to update that. All right, the columns area, and despite what the icon says, the columns area are the things that are going to go across the top of the report. So whatever you want to have stretch across the top of the report will go in the columns. And what do you want to have stretch along the left-hand side of the report goes in rows. So in this case, I'm going to take the customer field and drag it down to rows like that. And then I want to see quantity in the values area. And we'll take a look at our report. So we have sum of quantity for each of our customers. And then I'll choose revenue and profit and cost like that. All right, so there's our results using a pivot table. Now the advantage of a pivot table is no formulas at all. We don't need 12,000 formulas like Dan put in there. If the underlying data changes, well, it's really easy to fix it. So we'll just go to Blockhead Data Consultants here and change that 21,000 to 1,200,000. And come back to my pivot table, and there's a nice little refresh icon up here, the refresh icon. And so that number automatically changes in the data. So it's quick. If we add a new customer, I'll take hybrid software and replace with MrExcel publishing. Come back to the pivot table, click refresh, and that data will, it's annoying it gets added at the end instead of alphabetically, but it still gets added in. If my underlying data had commas in it, then we could, even then it won't put the commas in. You have to have the commas in. But if you use this method, it used to be that you would always lose any formatting you did in a pivot table unless you went into the field settings. But now if you select all the data, including the grand total, and we don't even have to go to field settings, just come back here to the home tab and use whatever format you want. If you like that currency or that comma, you can. I just want commas, so I use the number format, 1,000 separator, 0 decimal places, click OK. All right, now if we add more data in later, they'll remember that those numbers, even the extra rows, have to have commas. And again, I feel like I'm playing dueling Excel here to combat Dan, who gave us a report that was great for either customers or sales reps. It's easy to change what's along the left-hand side just by taking the customer field out, putting the sales rep data in. Or we could even build a better report showing for each sales rep who their customers were. All right, so it's just super flexible what we can do. All right, so there's the pivot table method. All right, now this is going to be wild. I've never tried this over a webcast, and I'm going to ask you, if you're sitting there on a desktop computer or a laptop computer, I'm going to ask you to grab your cell phone and open the camera app on your cell phone and just point the camera app at the screen, at this barcode over here, right? And if we're lucky, that is going to offer to open a brand new web page, right, on your phone. And there's only one question. It shows these 7 methods here: subtotals, remove duplicates, advanced filter, consolidate, Power Query, formulas, and pivot tables. And you can vote for, I'm asking you to vote for up to 3, the 3 methods that you like the most. I was just out of Microsoft in February, and one of the Excel team was up there with a PowerPoint slide, right? And he bounced this huge barcode up on the screen. I'm like, what is this? This isn't going to work. All right. But sure enough, I took my phone out, I opened the camera app, and I pointed it at the screen, and this survey opens up. I'm like, well, that's cool, right? So I went through and I answered the questions in the survey. And then what completely blew me away is a minute later, he goes to a web page that shows the results, the live results of the people who voted. All right, and I don't remember what he was talking about that time. Maybe he was talking about some new feature in pivot tables, but I wrote down, in my notes, it's like, wow, figure out how he did that. All right, and it turns out that this is a brand new bit of freeware. If you have Office 365, it's called forms.office.com, and you just build your little survey here. You can add a question, you can type your answers for the questions, and then under share, they give you either a link, which is just a horrible link. Like, I realize none of you would be able to type that link, or the barcode, right? You download that barcode, and check this out. This is absolutely wild. This had 0 responses when I created the survey an hour ago, and now 190 of you have voted, right? And I can tell that it's real because pivot table is the winner with number 1. And it looks like number 2 is consolidate, and then number 3 is automatic subtotals. And you can see the various choices there. And then I can even open that in Excel. All right. So if you're ever having a staff meeting and you just want to have the ability to do a survey, check this out. This forms.office.com. Generate that barcode. And it shocks people when you throw that barcode up like a PowerPoint slide with this huge barcode. And even from the back row, you point your cell phone there, and it works. Pretty cool way to go. All right. So let's open it up for questions. If you have a question over there in the question panel, there's a place for questions, and we'll do as many of these as we can. All right. Okay, so question from Nancy about how can I make the visible cells command, the visible cells command. So that was back under subtotals, or even filters would work. All right, and what we have is we have our original data here, and it started out like this with the underlying data. Then we added the subtotals in. To get just the subtotals command, we go back to the number 2 group and outline button, and we want to select all that data. And the slow way to do this, is to come out to Home, Find and Select, and Go to Special. Within Go to Special, choose Visible Cells Only. But that's like 5 or 6 or 7 clicks. So if you're going to be using this command a lot, what I want you to do is come up here to this tiny little strip that has the Save, Undo, and Redo. That's called the Quick Access Toolbar. Right-click there and say Customize Quick Access Toolbar. And there's 40 popular commands here. And of course, Select Visible Cells isn't one of the popular commands. So you have to open the left drop down and choose either, well, let's choose all commands. That gets us about 2,500 commands. And the frustrating thing here is we're selecting visible cells. So I always go look for it in the V's, V for visible, but it's not there. It's not in the visible cells. It's under S for select. So the hardest part here is remembering that it's under the S's instead of the V's. But if I choose Select Visible Cell, select visible cells, click the add button. Now I can't add it because it's already there. They'll add it to the bottom of the list. All right, so it shows up here at the bottom of the list. And then you can use these arrows on the right-hand side to move it to wherever you want. All right, and then you can also just use Alt semicolon instead. So I've added the command to the quick access toolbar, choose select visible cells. It's the one with 4, there, that one, 4 window panes. And now you can copy that data to a new workbook. All right, great question. The definition of a great question is I have an answer. So let's get back to the questions panel. All right, so question from Heath. For pivot tables, I would love to see how you put the customer for the row headings, product for the column headings, and then sum the profit of the data. All right, good, let's do that. Let's go back here to our pivot table. Customer for the row headings, product for the column headings, and then see the total profit. So we come here to our pivot data, and I have a pivot table out on the right-hand side that I'm gonna get rid of. We're just gonna start completely from scratch. So choose one cell in the data, insert, pivot table, and I'm gonna let it go to a new worksheet. Click OK. All right, so we wanna see customer for the row headings, and then products for the column headings. So in our pivot table fields, I'll drag it over here so we can see it. I'm gonna take the customer field, I'm gonna check mark it. And because customer is text, it automatically goes to the rows area. And I'm gonna take the product field, and I can't just check mark this. I can either open the dropdown and say, actually, I guess I would have to right click and say add to column labels. So right click and add to column labels, or I just use the old method of dragging it down to columns like this. And then you want to see total profit. So I take the profit field like that. All right, so there's my report. I print this out. I take it to my manager, Heath, and my manager says, profit, did I say profit? No, I didn't want profit. I wanted to see total revenue. All right, so that's easy. We just uncheck profit, choose revenue, print that out, and go back to Heath. And also, here, let's go back to Heath's question, profit, like this. That heading up there of sum of profit is really annoying. You're allowed to type another heading up there, like total profit. That's no hassle at all. The frustrating thing, though, is what I really want to type there is just profit, and they will yell at you and say, no, you can't use profit because we already have a field called profit. The pivot table field already exists. All right, and what you can do there is type profit and then a space. So name this field profit space like that, and they will let you get away with that. Okay, Sandra asked about Power Query. Power Query is free for 2010 and 2013, but in 2016, if you have Windows, it's just built in. The annoying thing is they got rid of that awesome name of Power Query and they called it Get and Transform Data. For the first 18 months after Get and Transform, I knew it was 2 words. I couldn't ever remember what the words were. You know, get and load, load and transform. All right, but it's get and transform. You just have to find it. It's either here in the 3rd group or the 1st group. Now, if you're on a Mac, they're working on getting you Power Query, but it's still some ways off. All right, so if you have Excel 2016 on a Mac, you're just going to have to wait or come over to the dark side and Windows. All right, George. Power Query seems like it is in Power BI. It is the exact same functionality that's in Power Query and Excel is also in Power BI Desktop under Get Data. And so they're very, very similar. Thanks, George. Good to hear from you. How would you put filters on the other columns of the pivot table? Oh, Grace, that is a great question. A great question that is against the law. You're not allowed to add filters here, right? There's absolutely no way that you can do this because if you choose filter, it's grayed out, right? Microsoft has some weird rule where they will not let you do this. But Grace, I'm really excited about your question because I have a solution. And I didn't invent the solution. I learned the solution when I was doing one of my Power Excel seminars in Philadelphia 12 years ago. A guy named Dan showed up in my seminar in Philadelphia. And Dan, he taught me what I thought was going to be the worst trick in the history of the world. Dan said, hey, look, we want to talk about filters here. We want to add the filters to this regular data set. And most people, Dan says, just come here and choose one cell into the data and click filter like that. And sure enough, it adds the filter drop downs. Other people, though, they'll select all of the data. So Control asterisk selects all the data, and then they click the filter icons like that. Some people use Control Alt L Some people use Control T, but Dan from Philadelphia showed me this amazing trick. He said, look, you have to look at your data, figure out the last heading cell, in this case, profit in H1, and go to the next cell, that blank cell right there to the right of the last heading cell. And for some reason, Dan says, that cell, which I now call the magic cell, will let you filter the adjacent data set, right? And that's fascinating, if fascinating means really boring and useless, because there's several other great ways to filter data. But here's the reason why Dan brought this up. See, you're not allowed to use a filter here, and Microsoft goes to great pains to make sure that you don't use a filter here. If you click out here into this nothingness, the filter icon is available. But as soon as you click inside the pivot table, they don't gray it out, or they gray it out. So they're making sure that as soon as you're inside a pivot table, you're not allowed to filter the pivot table. The person at Microsoft who's in charge of this, I haven't met this person yet, but I can tell one thing about them is that they've never met Dan from Philadelphia and heard his crazy trick. So the last heading cell is grand total. Go to the cell immediately to the right of that, and the person at Microsoft says, oh, well, they're outside of the pivot table, so there's no reason for us to gray this out, right? So Grace, you're gonna look at your data, and that row of column headers, go one column to the right of that, one cell to the right of the last header, and turn the filters on, right? And it works. This was amazing. You're not allowed to use filters in a pivot table, but thanks to Dan's trick, we're sneaking through a hole in the back gate. And now if I need to filter to just the top 5 widget customers, I can do that. All right, so I can ask for the top 5 items based on the widget column. Actually, I want the top 6 because this filter thinks that grand total is the largest item. So click OK, and I get just the top 5 like that. All right, so for whatever reason you need to filter the columns, Grace, you have to do it from the magic cell. And we'll all thank Dan from Philadelphia for somehow discovering that. You know, I've done a lot of seminars, probably for thousands of people, and Dan is the only person who ever showed up and knew that trick. All right, some other questions. Monique, you pointed out that to get to go to Control G will let us do that. So Control G and then the S for special and then K for blank. So I actually use Control G, Alt S, K, Enter to get to paste or go to special blanks. So that'll work. All right, Larry asks, in Consolidate, would you be able to select all of the column rather than the column range? So like FF instead of F1 to 564. So let's go try that. I actually have no idea. We'll come back here to our original data, and I'll move the questions panel out of the way and move this panel out of the way. And we'll get rid of our consolidated data. I'll just say I want to do everything here from D, E, F, G, and H. Like that. That's what I'm going to select. So I come out here to the right-hand side, data consolidate. We'll get rid of the old range and then choose D, E, F, G, and H, top row, left column. Of course, that's going to work. Sure, it's going to work. Yeah, hey, that's awesome. And the other advantage there is if we add more data later and then repeat the data consolidate, it will automatically expand with the extra data. So that question, Larry, is actually not a question, but a great tip, a great way to improve the consolidate. You know, also, I meant to mention this. When we do data consolidate, they have this choice here for create links to source data. And this works great when it's multiple workbooks, if you're consolidating several workbooks, because what it does is it gives us a little, you'll have your answer of that customer, and then there'll be a plus sign to expand, and you can see what their answer was in each of the 12 workbooks that it came from. But it doesn't work well here because, like if I had sheets called Jan, Feb, Mar, April, May, each one just says that it came from the Summarizing Data webcast, right? So this was really built back in the day when every workbook just had one worksheet. That's how old it is, right? So the create links to source data is great if you have multiple workbooks, but not so great if it's all in one worksheet. All right. Shilpin asks, can we do a quick overview of the auto filter feature? Yeah, and I assume that you're talking about what I call filter by selection. All right, so let's just find some good data that we can use here. Pivot data, this is perfect. And most people, if we wanted to filter to see all of the gizmo sales to a certain customer, what we're going to do is turn on the filters, open the product drop down, and to get to gizmos, I mean, I hate to complain about this, but it's one click there for product, a second click for select all, a third click for gizmo, and a fourth click for OK. And then for the customers, click number 5, click number 6 on select all, choose the customer 7, and click OK 8. So 8 clicks to pull that off, plus the click for filter. 9 clicks, and 9 clicks doesn't sound like a lot. It's not like I'm digging a ditch from here to China or anything like that, but it's 9 clicks, and I don't want to have to do 9 clicks. And so there's a great icon that you can add to the quick access toolbar called auto filter. And I realized that auto filter was the name of the filter icon back in Excel 2003 and before, but don't get confused. This auto filter is a better filter. So I'm going to right click, customize the quick access toolbar, and we want to find the auto filter command, which is not a popular command. You have to go to commands not in the ribbon or all commands, and it's right here called auto filter, right? And we'll add that to the quick access toolbar. I already have it there, right? And the way that auto filter works, if I need to see all the gadget sales, don't turn the filters on. Just go choose a gadget cell and click the auto filter, and it turned the drop downs on and gave me just the gadget rows. And then if I want to further go to just blockhead data consultants, choose that customer, click the auto filter, and it gives us just those. And if I, let's see, I don't have any more good columns, but I could choose another column and filter again, right? So it's just a beautiful way to apply the filters. I need to see all of Peter's records, choose Peter and auto filter. I need to see just Peter's sales of widgets, choose widget and auto filter, and you have the report. Another one here, I'm actually headed, later today, I've headed to Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I'm going to be doing a seminar tomorrow. And this next trick came from Fort Wayne. So this is a great way to end here. Once we've applied a filter, whether you use the auto filter or the filter drop downs, if you want to see the total visible, this is from David in Fort Wayne. If you are in the row just below a filtered data set like this one, choose those cells and come back here to the home tab and hit the auto sum button, which usually puts in sum functions. But in this case, it doesn't put in a sum function. It gives us the subtotal function, the subtotal 9, which is the great formula that says add up just the things we can see. Anything that's hidden because of the filter isn't there. All right. So in this case, 157,755. If I would change the sales rep from Peter to Michael, click OK. That total visible down there will update to show me those items. So again, just apply the filter first, and then choose those cells and use the auto sum. You'll get the subtotal function instead. All right, Stephanie, that's it for today. We went through 7 different ways to consolidate. Took a look at that new forms.microsoft.com, great way to take surveys on the fly. Thanks to everyone who tested that out for me, and I'll throw it back to you.
All right, thank you, Bill. This concludes our webinar for today. As a reminder, you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to a recording of the session. It will also include the link for requesting the CPE credit. Thank you for your participation, and we hope to see you again on our next webinar. Bill, thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.